movie, and I was just like, oh, and then there was the time that the power went out, and, you know, we robbed the 7-Eleven of all the... It was like a bunch of beef burritos and, like, and he's like, I don't think we can use that.
We've only had one episode where someone asked us to basically delete it. And that never went up.
Yeah.
All right. Ready?
No, of course we were.
Okay. All right. Welcome, Inebri-arts. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast. And we're back here again. And thankfully, I am not ill, as I was ill last time we were recording. But I am freshened from traveling, so I'm a little groggy. But so, for those of you who have been following us on Facebook and or if you live in Plymouth, we were asked now about 5-6 weeks ago to hold a pop-up art show as part of the Winterfest here in Plymouth. And for anyone that did come out, thank you. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. But we had 178 pieces on the wall, and we had 18 table spaces with different creators, some live music, and we had one artist there who was not only painting live, but but he sold 3 paintings, and that's Chris Mindle. And so we brought him in to talk to us, so welcome, Chris.
Hello, everyone.
And so how exactly did we meet? I don't even know for sure.
You guys were doing some sort of a show, and I just caught it last minute, possibly in my Facebook feed.
Oh, okay, so it's probably through one of our Facebook ads.
Yeah, it's over by where the gristmill was. We had to drop it off. I remember it was...
Oh, right. It was one of our pop-up art shows at the distillery.
Yes.
Because we would usually do drop-offs at the gristmill. All right, that makes sense. And I remember seeing one of your pieces at... I was helping out at the Artist Guild, and I think you put one of your pieces in their show, and I remembered seeing it. And since then, you've been taking part in all our shows and stuff, and we love your work. So how is it that you got, like, what first drew you to art, and, like, how old were you?
Well, I started drawing when I was younger, and the school I went to had a program called the Super Arts program, where they brought in high schoolers that were, I'm assuming, in their own art classes. Mm-hmm. And that kind of just got me hooked on it, and I had a knack for actual pencil.
Yeah.
I've always had a pretty active
Where did you grow up?
I was born in New Bedford.
Okay.
But, you know, I lived there till 10 or so, and then I moved and popped all around the country.
Yeah, nice.
At different times. But then I think when I turned about 14 or so, I used to tell people I kind of drew myself out. I had dresser drawers full of drawings, and I just kind of hit a wall with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of got into all the stuff that teenage boys get into. All my friends were starting to listen to heavy metal and going skateboarding and
right.
chasing girls. And I just forgot about the drawing, kind of set it aside. I tinkered with other stuff, a little bit of wood carving, a little bit of leatherworking, stuff like that. But I just wasn't interested. And,
like, at what point did you start to get back into... Like, what was it that kind of brought you back?
Well, a little bit before 2008, I was doing construction and working as a line cook at a fairly popular place in Alston. And everybody in the restaurant did art. Mm-hmm. And I went through this horrible breakthrough. And, oh no, I'm sorry. I wasn't doing construction at the time. I was working as a line cook, and I was a foot courier.
Okay.
And I went through this awful break.
You delivered feet?
No. Probably summons and stuff like that. Horrible things.
Yeah.
I had kind of a breakdown, and my adopted mother bought me a French easel and some paints and stuff like that, and you know, I was seeing what everyone was doing in the coffee shop. They would have these weekly or every other week shows.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to get in on it. And I met this guy, Ian. He goes by Ian Sanity. And he's like, oh, you should check out this artist and check out that artist. And the more I looked at it on YouTube, the more I was I couldn't stop. It was like going down a wormhole. I had to read about it. I had to check it out. And then they started inviting me to do guerrilla shows, pop-up galleries, bar shows, this and that.
So you've only been back kind of in the art industry since 2008?
Yeah, just about then.
Wow, okay. So, you've had
the Foot Courier thing basically died out, due to technology.
Right.
So I had a friend of mine that did construction, and he picked me up. And, I'd spend some of my time working on a roof in God knows what kind of weather, and then turn around and end up doing, line cook work. And it was they're no longer in business. They just couldn't afford Alston anymore. But it was called the Alston Cafe. And, I mean, this place was so popular, they had lines out the door. So it was killing me.
Yeah.
And the only salvation I had with that was doing this art. Everyone, the owners, the waitresses, the waiters, everyone was an artist in that place.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's weird that that's something that brought you to kind of back into art. I was at a restaurant 2 nights ago, and it's called Cafe 22 Tango. And someone told me it was a chain, but I'm not sure if it is. And it is, the walls are jam-packed with art.
Yeah.
Like every square inch. And they had one woman who was set up, and she had like a small thing of prints and some jewelry, and she was painting there. And then like on the other side of the restaurant, there was a woman that was sculpting. So she had like clay and all sorts of like tools and stuff. And I'm like, this is so cool. My boss was like, you specifically can't come to Florida and not come to this place.
Yeah.
And the food was great too. So, but I've just never seen anything like that where they had like people actively painting during. I've never seen anything like that either. When I grew up in New Bedford, I grew up in the projects. Yeah.
And outside of taking these doing the art in school, I didn't know you could. There was anything like an art scene or anything else.
Yeah.
Most of the people I grew up with, we ended up working in garages or getting in trouble or whatever else.
Or construction. Construction's a popular. Yeah.
So when I moved to Alston, I was just surrounded by it. I'd go to these warehouse parties and somebody would be live painting.
Yep.
And the coffee shop that I ended up working at, I started just going in there and I just started doodling again. And I noticed I wasn't the only one. And they just slowly started sitting around, and we ended up forming this group of people that were just drawing. And I just, after I had my little, meltdown or whatever, I picked up painting.
Yeah.
It just went from there.
It's funny, that is literally how Inebri-art started.
Yeah.
We were, have you met John Cardinal yet?
I don't think so.
He's kind of the third member, and
is he a youngish-looking guy, blonde hair?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. I saw somebody at the last show who had an Inebri-art shirt.
Youngest guy. Oh, that's Kenny. He just had a T-shirt.
Ah, fair enough.
But he tended bar.
Yeah.
And I was hanging out one night having beers, and he's like, "We should start a drink and draw." I'm like, "Great, when?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, I work Thursdays." I'm like, "All right, see you next Thursday."
Yeah.
And that's just how it started. It was that simple, and then someone came up with the name Inebri-art, and then we're like, "Oh, you know what else would be cool if we did?" And then it just kind of spawned from there.
Yeah, the scene in Alston, I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't a scene, but it was definitely really underground.
Yeah.
And, I think that because we were such a, just, popular-wise, we were a well-known group of people.
Right.
Constantly social butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
We were going. I lived on a street that was like the party street, right next door to a band practice space.
Oh, okay,
so
yeah.
there was constantly something going on.
So were you like 20s at this point, or
no? This 2008, I was probably in my mid 30s.
Oh, okay,
so.
Yeah.
But
I'm not used to having older people on the
well,
podcast.
people had known me for a long time because I used to be a street punk.
Yeah.
So, and the Pit Rats had their own little thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, For our listeners, what pit are you referring to?
Harvard Square.
Yeah.
It has a place called the Pit, and it's been kind of a gathering point for, travelers, eccentrics, homeless people, this and that.
For a long time. Yeah.
First time I ended up in Harvard Square, I escaped from a boys' home.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, well, you need to go to Harvard Square because that's where the punks are, and the punks will take care of you. And yeah, for the most part, they did.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to go in all the time when I was in high school, and it was a great community there.
Yeah, it was.
Like, you really didn't have anyone giving anyone else a hard time, generally speaking.
When I was there, they had this kind of famous in the underground scene, quote-unquote, war going on between, the punks and what we called the homeboys and this and that. And it actually got pretty serious for a while. And since at the time I was homeless, and I was like, well, I don't want to be involved in this. So I ended up hopping a freight train out of the Alston train yards and traveling back and forth across the country. And I did that for about 6 years or so.
Where'd you go?
Baltimore, New Orleans, Albuquerque, New York.
Now, when you do that, you have to have like a bag on a stick, right?
I had a backpack, the whole 9 yards.
So did you go to these places to just see them, or were you trying to set down roots?
I was just trying to live.
Yeah,
I was straight squatting.
Yeah. Where was the one place that you kind of most enjoyed?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. I feel like that would be kind of very.
It is one of
cool
those places that you could definitely lose yourself in every way possible.
Yeah. Where was the worst place? Where was the place that you just, as soon as you got off the train, you're like, nope? It's
a toss-up between Albuquerque and New York. When I was in New York...
Wow, New York, really? I figured New York
I was in Lower East Side in Tompkins Square Park, which had an absolutely notorious reputation back then. It was, all these, violent punks and drug addicts and whatnot. And then you had Giuliani, who was busting up squats.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting caught in a riot that started out as a beer festival. It was supposed to be a punk festival.
Yeah.
And it got out of control. And I remember wandering around through clouds of tear gas just looking for a bathroom, and I ran into two cops.
Shit.
And they ended up tooling on me and another guy.
Yeah.
Because the other guy had picked up a sharpened spoon with tape wrapped around it. I was like, don't touch that. I know what that is.
Yeah.
And they found it on him, and they definitely gave us the initiation. So.
Yeah. So at what point did you end up back here?
I ended up back here, I think about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I had one more year left in school, and I just had a lot of trouble with my kid's mother. We were just bumping heads a lot.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I needed to really just focus on this last year, because every semester it was getting harder and harder, and I hadn't been in school since
what school is it?
9th grade. It was School of the Museum of Fine Arts and Tufts University.
Nice. So you're enrolled there now?
No.
Okay.
I got a BFA from there.
Nice.
Yeah. So I came down here to finish my last year.
Yeah.
And was just commuting up there.
Oh, nice. So, what's your plan next? Or what's your hope, I should say?
Yeah,
I'm not a planner.
I was thinking about this yesterday, sort of in anticipation of us talking. I was like, man, the simple answer is I'd like to just have my art be in front of people. I don't necessarily hope to be famous or whatever, but a bit well known. But then when I really thought about it, I was thinking, when I started doing the art, I already had kind of a political bent, and my art was angry and in your face and this and that, and I had already spent years, participating in that sort of culture, and I just got burnt out from it.
Yeah.
So I think the direction that I'd like to go in with my art now is I like to paint something, and I like everything that I paint to have a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my story, but I try to leave it open-ended enough that whoever's looking at it can kind of form their own thing to it and make their own connection. And that seems to be one of the main things that people say to me. Right up till yesterday, someone came up to me and said, "Your art speaks to me." And I was, I didn't quite know what that meant.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
So, would you be interested in like a illustration job type of thing, or do you just?
I've kind of put my feelers out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a bit of a cold.
That's all right.
A lot of the artists that I admire started out doing something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sort of interested in it, but there's also a part of me that thinks that what I'm doing is my own.
Yeah.
And I guard it really well.
It's the wagon wheel question.
Yeah.
So I have a musician friend, and we had a really serious conversation one day. We were probably a little tanked, and I was kind of in this turning point.
Yeah.
Because I had started going to like Comic-Cons. I know you just did a Regia, that kind of thing. I'm doing
it right now, so that's why I'm a little bit like. Bleh.
Oh, is it still ongoing? Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I used to do Comic-Cons and stuff, and kind of as a joke, one time I drew Charlie Brown dressed up like in the Get Up from Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
And someone's like, "Oh, that's really funny," and it sold well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then someone's like, "Oh, you know what you should do? You should do Charlie Brown as this."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, all right. Oh, you should do Charlie Brown as that." And next thing I know, it's like half the shit on my table is Charlie Brown as something else. And they're like, "Oh, you're the Peanuts guy. You must love Peanuts." I'm like, "No, not really.
Not
I don't. I don't hate them.
Yeah.
They're just there." And so, like, I kind of got like wedged into this thing. When you get a table at Comic-Con, you're like, "Yes, I want to sell stuff.
Yeah.
I want to interact with people, but I don't want to lose money on the table."
Yeah.
And so it just kind of became like that was kind of like the bread and butter that kept the table going.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've certainly done art that I thought would lean more towards what I thought people would be attracted to. And I realized right off that I wasn't going to be able to do that. And I think it's not even so much a conscious decision so much as mentally I just can't put myself in two different spaces. If I've got something going on in my head, I'm going to paint it how I see it, how I feel, everything else. Some of the first paintings I did, once I started sharpening my skills a little bit better, I was selling on the streets back in Harvard Square. Someone told me I should do that. Yeah. And it turned out to be a huge benefit for me. Financially, and plus, I mean, if anybody knows Harvard Square, it's an international place.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up selling art to people in Dubai.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Australia. Yeah. But I was selling it for absolute dirt money, but it gave me the boost I need, and it gave
kind of that confidence boost.
That confidence
yeah.
That maybe I could keep going with this.
Yeah. I think every artist has that, like, kind of when they first start selling art. People are like, how much is this? And you're like, $20. And like, oh, okay. And you're like, wow, I probably could have got 30 for that.
I traded a painting for a bottle of Old Overholt whiskey once. I mean, I was just like, I got a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other person's like, that was so cheap.
But my original art, I was still trying to find my voice, so I was painting stuff like I don't remember the exact details, but it was an American flag, and it was in between the bars. It was every country that we have annexed or occupied or taken over, and then I listed all the ones that we're currently involved in, and I said, this one is next, this one is next, and if you don't believe this can happen, look at Hawaii.
Yeah.
Used to be an independent country that was recognized by other nations. Mm-hmm. That didn't stop us from taking over it.
Yeah.
And I remember this guy, I'm assuming who was a veteran, came up to me and he was like, "That's fucked up, man." And he was like, "I should just punch you." And he threatened to punch me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, A, I guess that's what I'm going for. But B,
you, in a weird sort of way, you're almost proving my point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you said your stuff used to be very political. And you said you've kind of mellowed, and it's almost more about your story
I think
now.
it's still political.
Yeah.
Someone told me don't hand it to them.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what they were trying to get at. And I think I sort of do now.
Yeah.
You know,
because when I look at your stuff, I think more like imaginative and fantasy. Like I would never look at any of your pieces and think political. It's so, I don't know, fanciful is insulting, and I don't mean it to be, but like, you know, very dreamy and surreal. Yeah.
And that's what I want it to at least initially come off as. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people that have looked at it said, you know, oh, I see this story in it, or oh, I see that story in it, you know.
Well, that's an excellent question. I know we've had this conversation before with other people. I'd like to get your take on it. So you paint a painting. It has your story, you know, your intent behind it. When someone else views it, do you... Like, are you upset if they don't see that and take it like in a completely different direction and go, "Oh, to me it means"?
I think initially, yes.
Yeah,
and that was only because I was like, "But you don't get it, and that means that I'm not doing it right."
Yeah.
Now, I actually embrace that.
Yeah.
You know, I know what my intention was with it, and I like to leave it strong enough story-wise that they can be hooked by it, you know, and drawn in. And it comes off like first looking as you know, just a kind of a whimsical fantasy, surreal, maybe a little bit dark. A lot of people say that my stuff looks kind of dark, even though it initially comes off as.
And I think some of that is your color palette. You pick very dark colors. Yeah,
and I deliberately try to set up the composition like that.
Yeah.
But then I also leave it open. You know what I mean? Like, there's a fine balance. Mm-hmm. And I try to leave it open in such a way that I'm not handing it to them, and I'm not shoving it down their throat.
Right.
And they can read into it what they want. And I've found that most times, especially with people that really enjoy art, whether they can do it or not, just plain enjoy it, tend to catch at least part of what I'm saying.
Right.
And then they either add their own narrative to it, or they come to the same conclusion that I did, or they just go to their own conclusion, and that's cool too.
Yeah. And almost from a marketing standpoint, it's like, that's almost what you need. You need someone to connect with it, not even necessarily the way you did, you know, in order to want to buy it.
The one of the big conflicts I have with the type of art that I do is that it seems that every year or so I either evolve or devolve into some other style, you know. And some of the stuff I've seen, I don't know if you've ever seen my actual website.
Yeah. I haven't really spent a lot of time. Excuse me, but I have poked around on it. Yeah.
Some of the stuff on there looks absolutely nothing like the majority of the body of work that's on there.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm not entirely prepared to let go of. And I've had people, especially when I first started out, say, you know, you should pick this, you know, a character and stick with it. And this, especially my friend Ian, who has a specific character that he does, and he kills
What's
it.
Ian's last name?
Tartaski.
Okay. I just knew an Ian that was like a artist, and he was very like big in Harvard Square. I'm like, can't be the same guy.
Yeah, he goes by Ian Sanity, and he really does kind of that street style.
Yeah.
But he has his own thing. But, you know, I didn't like the idea of just sticking in one tight, defined genre or character. You know, broadly speaking, I'm a big fan of the West Coast lowbrow pop surrealism. Mm-hmm. And I feel personally that fantasy and, you know, dark fantasy, stuff like that, falls in that category.
I feel like the whole lowbrow movement, I mean, I know it's a lot of it's from, like, derives from tattoos and kind of the hot rod, but I feel like pop culture is, like, right next door to it, so I feel like kind of that fantasy bleed over, like... Yeah,
and I think that pop culture, a lot of that, I think, is tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely,
or it's a commentary on it. And, you know, so I like to think that the stuff that I'm doing, and I'm always worried that the stuff that I'm doing is coming off a little bit too cutesy, which is why I try to really sit and put together a narrative with each piece.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be too cutesy. It is meant to be somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Right.
Yeah.
So how's Arisha going for you? Like when we
Arisha
booked this, I kind of forgot that was this weekend.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
I have a friend manning the booth right now, so I can talk to you guys. But when I set up on Thursday night, and it was 4 hours to set up, and
I saw the pictures online. It looks great.
I sold a print before the show had begun.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I have done cons probably for the better part, if not at least half my life.
Yeah.
And when you start making sales before the show opens, you're like, all right, I'm feeling more comfortable.
See, and that sort of goes back to what we were talking about, is I don't necessarily want to be pegged in one really tightly defined genre of fantasy. I love fantasy. I grew up with it. I was influenced by it. But I've always thought that the lowbrow movement kind of really covers a broad spectrum.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I've seen stuff that was very cartoonish and, very rat rod.
Yep.
And then I've seen stuff that, like, one of my favorite artists is a guy in England named Guy Denning.
Okay.
And his stuff doesn't look like anything you would consider, quote-unquote, lowbrow.
Right. Lowbrow is such a broad...
Absolutely stunning figures and very politically charged, but he really distresses it, and it's got drippings and this and that. And it's powerful. I would fit that in with lowbrow, But, yeah, as far as the show goes... I got a text before I met up with you that I ended up selling 4 more prints and 1 painting. So
nice.
So far, the second day, and it's going along really well. But I'm always worried that I don't want to be the pointy-eared Spock's crowd. Like, it's just not my scene.
It's funny. It's like
even though I love sci-fi, you know what I mean? I just don't love it to that level.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's like that pointy-eared Spock Big Bang stereotype is almost non-existent now. Yeah. I mean, they're there. They're still kind of left over.
I feel like they're becoming more mainstream and accepted, but that's...
Well, that's also very true, but I feel like it's more the mainstream is kind of getting on board with it.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like I said, I've been doing cons since the early 90s, and maybe even late 80s. But, at that time... If you saw one girl at a convention, you were like, holy shit, there's a girl here.
Yeah, yeah.
And, like, she was attractive? Forget it. She couldn't move, you know? And now it's like, it's everyone. Everyone is at conventions.
That's the one thing that I really have enjoyed, especially about... This is only my second time at doing any convention. Yeah. And the thing that I really liked about it is the spectrum of people that I've seen.
It's amazing.
Incredible. I've seen some very clean-cut people. And a lot of my friends, especially the people that I've bounced from house to house to, are a bit older than me or a bit younger than me. And the ones that are older than me are almost solidly into the sci-fi, D&D, hyper-intelligent, like, funny, nerdy people, and I love them. I love them for that. I've learned so much from being around them. And then I have my other friends that tend to be pretty intelligent, very politically active, absolute screaming gutter punks.
Yeah.
And
it's such a broad...
Along.
Yeah.
We have Sunday night dinners. We have Shakespeare night, Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah.
The one thing that I found really cool about doing the conventions... is you start to you get a following.
Yeah.
Like, I have people that will come up to the table and be like, what's new? What do you have new?
Yeah.
And just, okay, I'll take that print. I
noticed that for the first time yesterday.
Yeah.
And last year, because it was my first time doing it, I didn't expect that anyone would have looked at the website or seen my stuff hanging anywhere. But this year, I go in there and I'm like, well... could be 50,
have you had
50.
Like people come back?
I've had people come up to me and say, "You're Chris Mindle," and I was like, "Why, yes, I am."
Isn't that cool? Like,
yeah, it was really cool.
I've had.
And my daughter's up there tonight with my former housemates.
Yeah.
My daughter and her mom live with my former housemates, and they're all friends with all that crowd that goes to this.
Nice.
So they're up there tonight. So she gets to see what her dad does.
That's awesome.
And have it hang on the wall and have these people come over and look at it.
How old's your daughter?
8.
8?
Yep.
Does she draw?
She does, yeah.
Yeah.
I ask her if she likes art, and she's like, I don't know.
It's funny. Like at that age, it's like it's almost not like, I don't say it's not a thing they do. It's like my daughter just always drew.
She's
like
big in the crafting.
Yeah.
She loves crafting.
Yeah, my daughter loves that stuff too. Yeah.
About 1,000 painted rocks.
But I still feel like that kind of works in the same section of your brain,
Yep.
And it's weird how it just kind of, it grows kind of the same way it grew with me. I drew, like I don't remember ever anyone sitting me down and going, "Oh, you should draw." It was just something I did.
Yeah.
And
I had her at 3 or 4 years old gessoing the sides of my canvases.
Oh, nice.
And, it was fun for her to use a brush and splash gesso on.
It's so great to involve them in. I knew one guy who he did kind of these old samurai style paintings, but he's of Mexican descent, so it's all like luchadors and Hispanic themed.
Man,
they're amazing.
Awesome.
I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but of course I can't.
I was really big into that. Kind of that. We used to call it the Mexibilly scene, especially in like San Antonio.
He would totally fit into that.
You would see like Mexican skinheads that would go to like reggae festivals.
Yeah.
And then you see like these Mexican rockabillys, and they would have like these badass cars, but they would be low-rided.
Yeah.
But they would just balance in between, so it wasn't straight lowrider.
Yeah.
It was still kind of like rockabilly.
Uh-huh.
And I dated this girl for a good while, Maria, who was like definitely straight Mexibilly, had the 40s hairstyle.
Oh yeah.
I dig that whole culture.
Yeah. And this guy has his kids, like before he works on a piece, he'll have his kids draw on it.
Yeah.
And they're young enough where they're drawing and it looks like scribbles.
Yeah.
And, he'll like spill coffee on it and they're just completely distressed before he even starts working on it. And like, I never even noticed it till like someone pointed out. I'm like, oh yeah, look, there's pen drawings here. And it's just so cool. And with
I think that goes back to what you were saying, though. Yeah. Not to cut you off. What I want, and that's the main thing why I was so glad that she was showing up tonight.
Yeah,
is I want to expose. I try to expose it.
If I knew she was coming tonight, we could have just done this another night. Like I didn't realize we were.
No, man, I needed a break.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to see her next weekend.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and I get a nice long weekend with her. I try to expose her to the art every chance I can.
Yeah,
and I try to say, see, this is. You can make something of this. People will get. You can cheer people up. You can make people happy. This and that.
And people still have that mentality of, oh, you can't make a living as an artist, which is totally not true, like, at all. Like, so much is involved with art.
I was very on the fence about that.
Yeah.
Especially, I was killing it before I went to school, but I was killing it because I was selling so cheap.
Yeah.
I was just happy to actually have people really like my work and actually want to take it. You know? And then when I went to school, I put it aside for 4 years.
Yeah.
And when I got out, the first year or so, I was struggling. I couldn't get a show. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, I may have made a wrong choice here. And now it's like a snowball effect.
100%.
And honestly, a lot of that started like with you guys. I consider you two both like really good luck.
Did we fucking do something right?
Yeah, seriously.
I don't feel like that's a thing.
I'm not comfortable with this.
I feel like he's giving us credit for shit.
The thing is when I did the show, the Winterfest, I had people coming up to me saying, "Oh yeah, I saw your art over at the Guild," or "Oh, I grabbed your card and I looked at your stuff online."
Yeah.
So these are people that I wouldn't connect to coming to the Winterfest Inebri-art show that are showing up and recognizing me.
Yeah.
And then after that, I've got another show, I've got this going on, I've got that going on.
And
I'm thinking, be able to make it.
Yeah, and it is very snowball effect, but it's like you look at like any other job. You know, if you start off as an accountant, you get the small accounts first.
Yeah.
And you're going to fuck some up.
Yep.
And then as you get better, you get bigger, you know, more important things to do. And I'm talking about being an accountant. I don't know the first thing about being an accountant, so I don't know why I'm talking about that. But, you know, and it is. It's the important thing, I think, is to keep your... I don't want to say your eyes open, but kind of keep in mind, like, that opportunity comes from all different directions. I mean, when we started Inebri-art, it was a bunch of us just hanging out, shooting the shit, having some beers. And then when we're like, oh, we should, you know, maybe try and make some money at this. And we're like, oh, those paint nights are popular. Let's give those a try. And we did okay with those, but they're not nearly our most successful thing by any stretch of the imagination. And it's just because other people come up to us and be like, hey, what about this? And maybe you should give this a try. And it's been great.
I've had different philosophies on it. You know, when I first started, some of my friends were like, sell to everyone, sell anywhere, sell anytime.
Yeah. Which I don't disagree with that.
I did, though.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no. I mean, first of all, where I was selling, there were so many artists and there were so few people buying at the time that it would be easy to flood the market.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And also, you know, at the time, I felt like I had to pick, not be super picky, but be selective.
Yeah.
About where I was showing, what I was selling, you know, and then
because you can get pigeonholed. I mean, that's what happened to me at conventions.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, especially just starting out.
Yeah.
But I think, I think keeping your eyes open, and also, you know, the how I came about painting and doing the art is a big thing too. You know, it you know, obviously doesn't take a mental breakdown to cause somebody to do art.
No, but I think it helps. It's weird. I think it helps.
It helps a huge amount.
Yeah.
But the thing is you know, after I got my GED, I was set to go just do construction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just happened to have a year pass going to the Museum of Fine Arts, and I walked by the museum school, and I was like, fuck it. What's the worst they can say?
Right.
You know? No, it's not that good.
But
so
that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like having that, let's give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
And I didn't have nearly enough pieces. I literally had to go back, dig through my drawers, and find stuff that I did going as far back as when I was in the boys' home.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're talking old drawings that were pretty good for the time, for being, you know, a 15, 16-year-old kid, but they weren't.
It's cool that you saved all that stuff, though.
Quality.
Yeah.
But I added those. The woman's name was Robin Reed.
Yeah.
She said, bring in whatever you have that you think is your strongest stuff. I don't care how old it is. We're just kind of getting a feel for it. And she said, try to make it a broad spectrum. I brought in some of the paintings I was doing at the time, and they jumped on it, which was fantastic. You know, I ended up getting, you know, half scholarships. And,
oh, nice.
You know, financial aid and this and that. And I would have never done that without walking by and just saying, what's the worst they can say? No.
Right.
You know, then I'd just go back and keep selling on the street.
Yeah.
You know? You got to take the chance, you got to take the risk. And also, you know, if you don't think your work is good enough or strong enough, it may not be. But you can use that as a tool to your advantage.
Right.
You know, I actually liked the fact that my work wasn't that strong, and I also liked the fact that I had friends that were honest enough to come up to me and say, yeah, you know, that's a little weak in this spot.
Yeah.
You know, check this guy out, or check that girl out, you know, or maybe you could tweak that a little bit, or, you know, and then studying, you know. YouTube was my friend.
YouTube's fantastic.
YouTube was fantastic. And then having all these people suggest their favorite artists. A lot of them, I was like, meh, you know, they're all right.
Yeah.
But some of them, I was just floored by.
So who are some of your influences?
Well, my main influences right now are Aseo Andrews and Greg Simpkins.
Okay.
And there was a couple others. There's Guy Denning, Audrey Kawasaki, Natalie Sho. I actually wrote one of them down too. Arthur Rackham, Mark Ryden.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Ryden's really good. Martin Whitfuth. Zdislaw Beksinski.
Jesus Christ. I can't... Don't...
He died in, I think, the 80s. He was a Polish guy. He did these really dark, surreal things. But every time I look at his work, I think of either The Dark Crystal or Labyrinth.
Yep.
Even though it doesn't look anything like it, it looks more like a kind of Aliens, Giger kind of thing. So, my two main ones right now are definitely Simpkins and Isao Andrews.
Nice.
And Ryden, Mark Ryden.
So, how was Winterfest for you? We'll pat ourselves on the back a little bit.
Winterfest was absolutely the bomb. I had such a blast, and I've been still raving about it. I had a really great time, and financially, it was a boon for me.
Yeah.
But, also just, for that ego boost that you need, especially when it's wintertime and you can't show on the streets, and, maybe you don't have a lot of these shows coming in.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of things around here shut down during wintertime.
I was floored at the crowd of people that showed up, the quality of the art, the quantity of the art. I mean, it was just fantastic. It was really good.
It was...
And I made out really well.
Yeah.
And for, anything I didn't sell, people took my cards.
Mm-hmm.
And shot the shit with me. And that right there is valuable in itself. I had a bunch of little kids come up to me and ask about paintings and point right at it. And I have a what I think is a fun habit of offering the kid a brush and saying, you want to give it a go? Most times they shake their head no, like mad.
Have you,
every once in a while,
I was going to say, have you had people like...
I've certainly had them, especially, you get the bolder kids, and they're like, okay, and they put lines all over it, and I don't care because it's oil. I can correct it like that.
Yeah.
So, and just, you step back and say, look what you did. You put this line on this great piece, and they just beam with it,
Yeah, that's awesome. It'd be very cool someday if, like, you were at a Regia or something, and some kid came up like, you let me paint. Now, now I paint. That'd be amazing.
That would be cool. I would like to see down the line, I would like to be better known. I'd like to get my work out there and be able to hold my own with people that I admire.
Yeah.
I'd obviously like to make enough money that I could feel safe and, make sure my kids safe.
Live comfortable. Yeah, that was kind of always like, I'd like to.
And I also want
an
influencer and influence any other people that, that do that. I mean, I've certainly, when we were doing group shows, some of the people that asked to join our group shows were really not great at doing art, but you just kind of push them along and say, tweak this a little bit, touch that up a little bit. And a couple years later, I do a pop-up show, and they're killing it.
Yeah.
You got to have that drive. You got to, it sounds cheesy, but you got to be hungry.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not cheesy at all. It's very true. And that's the one thing that we've always...
And it's got to be an obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that we always wanted to do, was to make sure everyone is welcome. Yeah. Like, I had someone the other day been like, oh, do you think in your spring show that, my 15-year-old could... I'm like, yeah, my daughter put a piece in, she was 12.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome.
Absolutely.
And, it's just as important for, my daughter, who's 12, to go in and feel proud that her pieces hang with everybody else's.
And, it's time to, I think that there's nothing wrong with pushing against the established norms and flooding, the area with alternative art, And I absolutely love the Dutch masters. I love a good landscape, and I certainly appreciate all that, and it's been a huge influence on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to paint like them as best I could. But I went towards,
right, you do what appeals to you.
But it kills me when I go to a show and I see lobster pots and marshes and this and that.
Yeah.
And then I go to Inebri-art, and some of the stuff I saw there was just floored me.
Wow, thanks. We
That's what
had a variety.
That's why I want to go to places and break the establishment.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, we had those lobster pots, and people are like, oh, is
and
there
there's nothing wrong. Are
there lighthouses? Yeah, there's a few lighthouses.
Yeah.
There's also skulls, and there's a Godzilla, and there was everybody was welcome.
Yeah. It just bothers me when people get in that tunnel vision, and
that kind of mentality of real art,
and that's why I've always liked the idea, even the idea behind lowbrow was, these guys are painting, these absolute, real lives, or they're going super abstract and splashing just black on white, and then you have people painting big-eyed girls.
Yeah.
Which is something that I grew up with on my wall, so I knew it. And then I added seeing, my mom's big-eyed girl paintings with watching The Dark Crystal and The Labyrinth.
Right.
And you combine the two together with a wild imagination and basically a bunch of hard living and short life, and you come up with what I have.
Yeah. I saw paintings from you're a pop culture type of person, so you've seen Back to the Future.
Yep.
And Biff Tannen paints.
Oh, no kidding.
And he does amazing paintings of kind of the toys he grew up with. So
I love seeing that.
So they're like these really, really nice paintings of like a toy fire truck. Yeah. And I guess he did some that were like Disney specific. Like one I know was one of the Dumbos you sit in on the Dumbo ride. And he did so many of these kind of like Disney ones that he actually got invited into this gallery that was only meant for Disney artists.
Oh, wow.
So like he's a pretty legit painter on his own, and I love people that and that really appeals to me, because when I was in art school I did a whole study of the cootie face, the cootie bug, the game.
Yep.
So I did like all sorts of different paintings of the cootie bug.
Yeah. That was the bug. It was a round red thing with the.
It had like yellow antenna. There were different colors, and like you had to roll dice.
It was
a game. Like roll dice to assemble your cootie bug. Yeah. I should get back to that, because I really I thought it was a lot of fun.
The one that I saw was he's a younger guy, so I know he's not referencing stuff from his childhood, because he's definitely a lot younger than me. But he paints to the wind-up robots from the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Doing every manner of thing. Eating donuts, voting. I mean, you name it, they're doing it.
And they paint amazingly well. Yeah. And it's strange. I just find it strange that some artistic-minded people can look at that and be like, that's not as important or as good as my sailboats, or whatever. They're,
and I wondered which direction I should go in when I started painting, because I did like the classics and the masters, and I knew that I had at least some sort of a budding talent that I could go in that direction. I've certainly done realistic life drawings, and I focus a lot on landscapes, cityscapes, but I saw, I think it was Mark Ryden was the first guy I saw, and he references a lot of stuff from his childhood, which was 50s and 60s. Yeah. And I think he has sort of Eastern European, Russian background, so he kind of adds that into what he would have saw back then for childhood toys and this and that. And, he does stuff like, there was a show called, I think, The Gay 80s, and it was meant to be the gay 1880s.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's got all these women wearing these big ball gowns, but they're made out of meat.
That's weird.
And he has one called The Tree Show, and he's got one called The Meat Show. But, you look at his work, and you're like, oh, that's a big-eyed girl. Yeah. And then you look at the details, and you're like, he is got a technical skill that I, every day, am still trying to sharpen my skills with. Yeah. And I've seen him paint. He only has one video on YouTube, but you see his method. And I realized that I recognized his method from learning it in art school. Right. And it's funny, for doing the type of art that I do, I use the Flemish 7-layer method. I
Okay.
paint a dead layer, the gray layers, and just keep building up.
Yeah.
And I notice he does the exact same thing. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm on the right track.
Right.
He's using this old classical method that's been around since 16 Dickety-Doo,
Yeah.
and he's adding it to, this lowbrow thing.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I love that. And I love testing and mixing and matching and trying new things, which is why I'm always worried that I'm going to get pegged as painting something that may come off as cute. Because I just submitted to a show today for a specifically lowbrow gallery in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and it's definitely they say they're lowbrow, but they're definitely more on the dark side of it.
Yep. Yeah.
So I submitted some pretty dark stuff that I haven't shown, because anytime I have, people are like, dude, that's either way too creepy or they just weren't interested.
Right. Yeah, and that's is finding the right crowd for the right painting. That can always be tricky.
But it always surprises people when they see my entire body of work. I have one that's a schoolmarm, and she doesn't have any eyes, and she has these like claws coming out of her hair, and it's from like a Victorian era, so she has a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she has her 2 little children that she's teaching, and the girl has a beak, and the kid has basically like a wormhole with teeth around it. It's creepy as fuck.
Oh, it's weird.
But it's done entirely in that sort of lowbrow style.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the one I submitted today was the teddy bear stitching up a little girl inside of.
I think Pat told me about
Yeah.
that one, and she's like, "Oh,
Nobody likes it but me. But
yeah,
I think
I
it's
want to
great.
see it because I think it sounds amazing. I think it would be really good at the right show."
Yeah.
And I was talking.
So I always try to give people that warning when people are like, "Oh, your work is so fantasy and it's so whimsical," and I was like, "You have no idea. I have a picture of 2 little kids teaching each other how to do a Molotov, and then there's the White House right in front of them."
All right, you may want to keep that.
Yeah.
Can we erase that? I already feel like we're on some sort of watch list.
Yeah, so at this point, why?
Yeah. But it's all about the right marketplace, and Pat was talking about that the teddy bear one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that would absolutely kill at a horror convention.
Exactly.
And it's like
And
you just
I love horror.
Yeah.
I love being scared to death. When I was a little kid, the only way I could watch horror movies is I'd turn the volume all the way down, and I'd take all the couch cushions and build a fort so you could only see my eyes. And you couldn't barely hear it, but I would watch it. And I watched, I think it was It, when the 80s.
Oh,
version
yeah,
of
yeah,
It,
yeah, yeah,
When
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like 4.
Yeah.
It gave me nightmares, and I'm still obsessed with watching it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. What'd you think of the new movie? Did you see it?
It was decent.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
But, I have to say, I went back and looked it up.
Yeah.
Found the 50s version. And
Of it?
absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was originally called The Thing from Outer Space.
Really?
And it is amazing because the budget was so low that they had to rely on the acting for the scare factor.
Right, yeah.
And it was just creepy.
Huh.
The whole movie. You don't see the alien until halfway through, and it's basically a guy painted up green wearing a suit and Frankenstein boots.
Yeah, yeah.
But the acting and the storytelling made up for it
Right.
by a huge amount and blew me out of the water. And I've always loved some of the old 50s horror movies and stuff like Wolfman. And
Yeah. See, I love...
Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of my
I
favorites.
love kind of like the real cheesy... I don't even know if they're horror. They're like, they were big in like the 50s when it was like, they irradiated locusts and now they're
Absolutely.
giant.
Yeah,
And,
same thing.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that with Born in New England, Creature
Double Feature. Yeah,
that was my obsessed go-to, and after
Yeah.
that was like Hours of Kung Fu, which was also
Yeah,
cool.
we were actually invited to. They have this thing called the Creature Double Feature Roundup,
Oh,
and
man.
it's a small fan convention of people who grew up watching Creature Double
Yeah.
Feature, and we were invited to record down there, and I loved it when I was a kid.
And you know how as you get older, you go from the 50s, and then the 60s got really dark and creepy too.
Yeah.
And then the 70s also dark and creepy, but it got a little bit more kind of absurd.
Yeah.
And then you hit about the 80s, and it just started getting a little on the cheesy side, at least for me.
I feel like stuff in the 80s was
It was really hit or miss.
Yes, but I also feel it was like the dawn of like the very, very dawn of a golden age of special effects.
Yeah.
Where people tried to push the special effects
before its time.
And so some things are really not good.
Yeah.
But if they hit it right, man, like it.
That was like I used to visit my dad on the weekends, and the big thing we did was we could rent movies.
Yep.
And you could rent videotapes for shit money. And
renting
I just remember,
videotapes.
Yeah. It was,
for our young listeners, that used to be a thing.
Yeah. And there was that one, it came out in the 80s, it was called Screamers.
I don't remember that one.
And it was the cheesiest movie ever, but it was so well done.
Yeah.
That I don't think it was ever in the movies.
Yeah.
And if it was like a B-list movie, definitely.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly well done. Like, one of the best movies on the planet. It creeps the hell out of you.
Do you ever go back and watch the movies that you watched as a kid and be like, oh man, this doesn't hold up?
Almost exclusively watch stuff like that or listen to it as I'm painting.
Yeah.
I listen to a Twilight Zone channel on my computer back when Twilight Zone was still only on the radio.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
All these old...
I didn't even know they did that.
They have that, and they have another one that was around, I guess, back in the 50s that my father told me about that he listened to called X-1. And it was basically the same thing. X-1. In this episode, they're stuck on planet Kerflakalak, you know.
Oh, so it was like a sci-fi kind of... Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I usually listen to a lot of that stuff when I'm painting. And I have a playlist that I listen to when I'm painting.
Yeah.
Or I listen to Tom Waits.
Tom Waits?
Yep.
Why Tom Waits?
Because I love Tom Waits.
Oh, okay.
I love his... Everything he does is what I feel... should be or I want to be in my paintings.
Yeah.
And you know, that vibe.
Yeah.
I like his kind of dark, surreal, tongue-in-cheek humor kind of thing, you know, and also like talent.
Yeah.
I think he's talented anyway.
I loved him in Mystery Man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was in Down by Law. Great movie. Great movie, and that's where the punk band got their name from.
Yeah.
Which was a 80s hardcore band from Boston, and they were called Down by Law. And I was like, where did they get the name Down by Law? It's just a badass name. And my friend who's from Russia is like, you do not know who Down by Law is? He's like, we must watch the movie.
Yeah.
It has Tom Waits. And, oh man, it was a great movie.
So I already know that certain movies have influenced your work, but like, did you find a lot of influence from movies and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If not directly, you know, one way or another, like the lighting or the scene or how the composition is, then definitely, or how the story, then definitely the vibe, the feel of it.
Yeah.
You know, I've always loved Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, Legend.
Yeah.
You know, I love that feel, and I try to put that into my paintings.
Do you ever kind of see your paintings as kind of a jumping off point for like some sort of movie, or? I
do, and I've certainly looked into things like that. I looked into submitting some of my work to, I think it was Jim Henson Company.
Yep.
And I backed out of it because I was smart enough to read the fine print that says that if they're not asking for the art,
yeah, if you submit it, they own it.
You send, they own.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to commit to something like that because, man, would I be pissed if there's like the next Aladdin movie comes out with my characters in it. I'd be hot.
And the thing is, I don't think it's meant to be nefarious. I think it's I think it's one of
not.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where people probably send them so much stuff.
Yeah.
That they have to protect themselves from someone going, "That's my character," and then them going, "Hang on a second," and looking through reams of paper and going,
"Yeah, you know, it's my luck that I'd be the guy that submits something that they thought was great enough to put in a movie, and I'm not going to see anything from it."
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I do actually want to try to look into that, and the only reason I haven't been more proactive about it is because, surprisingly, and this is not a complaint anyway, I'm incredibly busy.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. But I certainly have back burner stuff. I do want to actually try to do something towards Jim Henson.
Yeah.
Towards there was another one. I looked it up, and I'm drawing a blank now. But just character development, stuff like that for different things. Because I also have a bunch of like pen and ink drawings and stuff like that I think would work well for character ideas.
Nice.
And I have a few short stories that I started either in school and just never finished, and I may actually try to submit those at some point.
Nice. Well, it was a pleasure finally getting to sit down and talk with you. I mean, I feel like every time we talk, it's at a drop-off or, like, at an event, and it's always kind of like, great. Oh, hang on, I gotta go do something.
Well, I hope I gave a decent interview. I feel like I'm a little out of whack with this cold and running through.
If you listen to the last 4 episodes, I was completely out of whack. I was sick as a dog when we recorded them. But we hope you just continue to see you at Inebri-art stuff until you get so big that you pretend like you don't know us. No,
I actually plan on following you guys, and I'm looking forward to the next stuff you guys do. And I'm not just saying that, it's talk about an asset for local artists. I mean, you guys are doing something really, really fantastic, and I just can't speak enough about how the Winterfest came out.
It's so weird. After Winterfest, I kind of like sat down and kind of like recapped it in my mind, and it was surreal because it's the first time I'm like, wow, that. I feel like
did it hit you?
I feel like a lot of people went to that and enjoyed it, and that I feel like we accidentally made something.
Yeah, and I actually think that's exactly it.
Yeah,
and it was funny because I was talking to somebody about it, the Winterfest, and I said, I bet you those two guys are sitting there thinking, whoa.
Because, I mean, in my mind...
That happened.
In my mind, we're just a couple of chuckleheads, and someone's like, hey, will you do this? And you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you're standing there, and at one point I'm, like, counting how many pieces we had. Yeah. And then you hit 50, and then you hit 100, and then you hit 150, and you're like, holy shit, this is... And I actually threatened Fish. I'm like, if you go around and add up how much this art is worth, I will fucking kill you because I don't want to know. And
I did. I thought of that afterwards. I was like, I wonder exactly how much it was all worth.
I still don't know, and I don't want to know.
No, don't want to know.
Don't want to know.
Don't want to think about it.
I mean, when I added up what I made, not before you guys, before. Materials and everything else, I came out pretty well at around 2,000 or so.
Nice.
Including the prints.
Awesome.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
I mean,
in fact,
we sold...
I have to say that's probably, I think, the best I've ever done.
Yeah. I mean, we sold 8 pieces off the wall.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you look at 178, that's not a lot. But it was a good chunk of change that we were able to help people move some stuff. So it felt great. It was amazing. So for our listeners, you should follow us on Facebook because we are planning other events in the relatively near future. You can find us at Inebri-art on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us at inebriart@yahoo.com. And Chris, where can they find your stuff?
crmindlegallery.com.
Yep. And I'm assuming there's contact information there. They can contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also on Facebook, and I think it's the same thing. It's just CR Mindle Gallery on Facebook. And
do you have on your website? Do you have prints up for sale?
I have prints for sale. I have original paintings. I'm willing to do commissions. I've had a couple of people talk to me about doing illustrations for their books. In fact, at Inebri-art, children's book writer came up and said that I need to go to some site, which I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Because he thought that they would snatch up my work for illustrations.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Excellent. So, thanks for coming chit-chatting with us. And good. How long does Aresia go on for?
It is...
I thought it was just a weekend thing. I didn't realize it was still going on.
It's going on... Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I think Monday it'll be going on for part of the day, and then we break down.
I'm sorry. My brain is completely screwed up. So I'm so used to doing conventions, right?
Yeah.
Like Comic-Cons and stuff. At the most, they run Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So I just came back from a trade show for the company that I work for. So all Thursday long, I'm like, Sundays are always slow. Sundays are always slow. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like... It's the third day of a con. Sunday. It's always slow. They're like, it's Thursday. So in my brain, it's Monday. I told you, I have the weirdest jet lag. I stayed in the same time zone. I have no fucking idea what day it is. So yeah, it totally makes sense that you're at a convention because it's the weekend right now.
Yep, I have Aresia, and then BossCon is a little bit after that.
Nice. So you can be, what's the dates on BossCon, do you know? Because this episode's going up Monday, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Next Monday, okay.
I want to say March.
Yeah.
But they have the website.
Google it.
And all the info on there. And then I'm expecting you guys are probably going to have something in the works.
Yep. We will have another pop-up art show. Someone was literally asking me about it the other day, and I'm thinking it'll probably be April. I got to get with the guys with Dirty Water Distillery and pick a date.
Nice.
Yeah,
I love those guys.
And then
that's a sweet place.
After Winterfest, we've started to. We haven't done anything initially because it's just now the end of the holidays. Yeah. But we have some plans.
All right.
So
cool. Great. Well, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed doing this.
Awesome, man. I can't believe you weren't like, I'm not doing that. I'm at Aresia. Because I would have been like, all right, we'll reschedule.
No, I actually got somebody in the main station. And I was like, I'm going down so I can get an interview. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Cool, man. And so I think that's it.
I'm not saying, but I'm kind of a big thing.
See, I used to make that joke, and then it's like, people are like, oh, this is the one of the selectmen, and you're like, wow, the selectman's thanking me for doing things. This is weird. So yeah, I think that's about it. All right, thanks for listening to our podcast. Don't forget to check out our other podcast. There's the Bar Talk podcast, there's Old Colony Cast, and of course the Inebri-art podcast along with Jam Packed. You can find all those on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. If you're on some sort of service and you can't find it, let us know, and we'll help you out or add our podcast to that too. You can contact us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com and follow us on Facebook as well as Twitter at Inebri-art. And feel free to send us some tips, ideas, advice, hate mail, whatever it is, you can get us there. And again, thanks for listening.